Them that's got shall get, them that's not shall lose. So the Bible says, and it still is.
How you doing? This is Jazz for oldfashionedhealth.com, and today I'm here to give you a quick first half review of the book of the month, which is Outwitting the Devil. So I'm going to skip a couple parts, but I'm going to get right to the meat of the first part of the book. So in the beginning, Napoleon Hill finds himself at a very dark part of his life, and somehow he taps into the subconsciousness of the devil. And he says, listen, I'm going to interview you talking to the devil, and you're going to tell me the truth, and you're going to give me straight answers. And the devil says, sure, I'll do that, because this is going to harm you more than me if you let this out. So sure, interview me. So Napoleon Hill goes to interview the devil, and the devil stops him and says, listen, first of all, you're going to call me your majesty. I'm not going to be called the devil. The devil has a little bit of an attitude, right? So Napoleon Hill says, cool, your majesty. So Napoleon starts to go into a couple of normal questions. What is your physical appearance? Well, your majesty says, I don't have a physical body like you would. That would poison me, right? I'm the negative energy. I'm the yin to the yang, the negative part of the atom. I am the negative energy around you, and I live in your mind. He says, okay, well, how do you get control of people's minds? Well, I have many tricks, says your majesty. And Napoleon Hill says, well, what is your main one? What is your main trick to get control of people's minds? He says, well, that's easy. That's fear. And your majesty goes to say 6 or 7 different kind of fears that work the best. Fear of loss of love, fear of old age, fear of poverty, fear of death. And Napoleon says, well, what are the 2 main ones that work the best? And he says, that's easy. The fear of poverty and the fear of death. Who are some of your greatest enemies on earth that oppose you? And your majesty goes in and says, any person who inspires anybody else to think or act for themselves. Because remember, the devil doesn't want you thinking or acting for yourself. He wants to control your mind, right? So anybody who does that, those are his enemies. So then Hill then asks, well, who are your greatest allies that help your cause? And Napoleon says, your majesty says, and this is one of the reasons, in my opinion, why the book just came out a couple years ago. Remember, this book was written in 1938. It was, I think, released in 2011. So the devil says, or your majesty says, my greatest allies on earth are teachers, parents, and the church. He goes on and says, well, look at teachers. If you think about it, when you're young, 2nd, 3rd grade, kids are always raising their hand saying, pick me, I want to answer the question, right? Well, after a while, they begin to realize that they begin to get criticized for getting the wrong answer or being looked at differently. So fast forward 10 years, those same kids are on the back of the classroom because they had fear of criticism, right? Look at parents. Have you ever gone to a science fair and looked at a science project and said, well, you know what, I know a parent helped him with that. Think about it. If you're a parent helping a child with a science project, you're saying, listen, let me do this, just watch. Well, you're taking away that child's ability to think for himself. Parents. Now, churches. So churches, the devil says, well, I want people to fear me. Out of churches, they say, if you don't do this, this will happen. If you don't do this, this will happen. He'll get you, this and that. The devil welcomes that because he wants you to fear him. So he loves churches. Mind you, this is not what I totally believe in. You what's in the book, right? So the first part of the book is about fear, which I just went over. And then the devil goes on and says, well, if you have fear in your mind, which is me living in your mind, you're going to begin to drift. Now, if you ever driven a car and you drift in one direction, chances are you're going to start drifting in multiple directions, right? So he says, once you have fear, you're going to become a drifter. Once you're drifting, eventually, that's going to turn into a hypnotic rhythm. So fear, drifting, hypnotic rhythm. And that hypnotic rhythm is going to be full of negativity. Think about it like this. Think about it if you're looking down in a whirlpool and you drop a piece of paper down. It's going to drift a little bit, bounce around a little bit, but eventually it's going to get caught up in that whirlpool of negativity. then that's what he wants. That's what Your Majesty wants. He wants to control your mind. Now, mind you, hypnotic rhythm doesn't always have to be negative. It can also be positive. If you start with a positive habit, say you get up every morning at 6:30 and have a great breakfast, that's eventually going to become into a hypnotic rhythm. That's going to be positive. But a lot of people stay in that fear, they start drifting, and then they get in that rhythm. Personally, I always thought that FAIR was just an acronym for false evidence appearing real. Actions you can do in the present on something that hasn't even happened yet. A fear that something that may never come to be, but yet you're letting it affect your present. That's how I always looked at it. So the first part of the book is really good. You have the fear, drifting, and then hypnotic rhythm. The second part of the book, Napoleon goes into 7 principles to try and get out of that hypnotic rhythm. So stay tuned. I think next week we'll have the second part of the book. And Outwitting the Devil. It's a good book so far.
So the Bible says, and it still is news. Mama may have, and Papa may have, but God bless the child that's got his own.